Do you like colouring but don't want the hassle of blending colours together? In this video, I show you how to do it. Hello there, Michelle Short here with Terrific Tags with Michelle. Today I'm sharing how to do no blend colouring with woodless colouring pencils. So let's get started. I'm starting off by pressing my image. So this is the Wild Daisies press plate, and I'm placing it down onto the chase, which is magnetic, so it's going to hold that plate in place. And then I can figure out exactly the placement of where I want this plate to be. I am going to press onto an A2 panel of cardstock, so I want to make sure that the placement is correct for me to do my die cutting afterwards, because I'm going to die cut this into a tag. So I'm using the letterpress system here, and you can see that I've got that plate there, and then I've got the platen on top. This is the opposite way at this moment in time, so that I can place my A2 sized card cotton panel on top. And I'm going to hold it in place with some satin masking tape. So I'm just going to tear off little pieces of that tape and place those in the corner of the panel. And this is just going to keep it in place so that it doesn't move when I run it through my die cutting machine. And just these tiny little pieces is going to hold it in place, no problem. And I had no issues with the paper ripping or anything like that once I took the tape off. So I can just lift off that platen there, and then I'm inking up the plate using the ink that comes with the letterpress system. The reason I'm using this ink versus fresh dye inks, which you can definitely use, gives beautiful impression, was that at this moment in time I didn't know how I was going to colour the image, and I wanted a waterproof ink so that I had different options of how I was going to colour it in. In the end, I didn't need the waterproof properties of this ink, but I wanted to just be on the safe side. So I'm popping that platen back in place with the magnetic pieces on either corner, and that's just going to hold that in place while I run it through my die cutting machine. So I am running it through quite slowly. I find that this is the best way for me to do it personally, to make sure that I don't accidentally get any smudging of the ink. I did get a tiny bit of smudging on the image just above where one of those top petals is on that top flower. I did go ahead and remove that little bit of extra ink off camera. In the end, I actually wish I hadn't have done, because it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, and I did accidentally sort of peel some of the cardstock, but I'm going to cover that up a little bit later and I'll show you how I do that. But I've got a really lovely impression on that cardstock there. It's always difficult to see in photos and on camera, unfortunately, but in real life it's got that really lovely texture of that plate pushing down into that cardstock. So you've got like a debossed image. I'm then taking the Terrific Tags die, placing that over the panel, running that through my die cutting machine, and now I've cut out that tag. So I do lose quite a bit of the image, but I think there's still enough there for me to do some nice colouring with. So I'm taking the Woodless colouring pencils, and I'm taking some pink, purple and blue tones for the petals, and then I'm also taking some greens for the leaves, and I completely forgot that I needed some yellows for the centre of the flowers, so I do go back and grab those at a later date. So for the colouring, I thought that I would show how you can do kind of colouring without blending, but it still looks like it's blended together. So I'm taking my mid-tone shade here, which is the purple, which is Midnight Violet, and I'm flicking the colour from either end of the petal. I wanted there to be colour on either side, so on the tips of the petals and then also where the petal meets the flower centre, and I'm literally just going in a flicking motion. I'm doing this fairly light at this point in time. You could definitely go in with a harder pressure and you would get kind of more not only darker flicks, but you would also get sort of more defined flicks, I suppose. I'm going in with a slightly lighter hand, at least to start with, and then as I build up the colour, I can go in a little bit of a heavier hand. So again, I'm just going in here and adding those flicks on the end of the petals, and then also in the centre. And I do want to leave kind of like a little bit of a white highlight in the centre of the petals, so I'm just going from either side. So I really love colouring with colour pencils, but it does take me quite a long time to get a nice blend, or at least a blend that I'm happy with. And so although this isn't a quick method by any means necessarily, it is a little bit easier because I'm not having to take that extra time to get that really smooth blend. I'm kind of getting it automatically without actually having to blend. So I'm going in here with the pink shade, which is Rubelite, and I'm going over what I've already coloured with the purple shade, and then just bringing in those flicks even further towards the centre of the petal. Some of the petals I added more pink in and kind of covered up a lot of that white space in the centre, and some of them I left them a little bit more open. I think in nature generally you would get lots of different shades in flowers, and so it's quite nice to do different things with different petals, and I still think it looks really nice even if they don't all match. So I'm now going in with my darkest shade, and this is Sapphire, and I'm really just adding that towards the tips of the petals and then the really kind of center portion of the petals, just to really darken those up. I'm not going in like with a really strong hand here. I am going in with a fairly light hand because I wasn't sure if I wanted them to be really dark, but you could definitely go in with a heavier hand here and add a little bit more pressure to it, and you would definitely get a little bit more defined lines. It's a little bit difficult for me when I'm colouring on camera, so I don't always get into those little kind of nooks and crannies, because usually I would have my head like right over how I'm colouring, and so I can't quite see perfectly what I'm doing here. So I do go back in off camera and kind of go into those kind of nooks and crannies and just fill in those spaces. I do just want to mention that because on camera it looks like I've completely left those out. So I continued with the colouring of those petals using those same 3 shades of pencil, and then here I got a little bit over the edge of the petal, so I'm just using a pencil eraser here just to remove that excess pencil. And the great thing is with pencils is you can erase them really quite easily. So I can just finish off here with the last petal, and although daisies generally are probably kind of more white petals with sort of yellow centres, I thought that I would go in with a little bit more of kind of like an echinacea or a coneflower look, rather than an actual daisy, because I think they look quite kind of fairly similar. They don't have so much of a cone sort of centre to them, but I still thought it'd be quite nice to do different colours here. So for the centres of the flowers, I'm using some yellow shades. So I first went in with maple yellow, and then I realised that that wasn't quite dark enough, so I went in with yellow ochre. And then I'm going in here with fresh lemon as my lightest shade. And I'm not being too neat here. This probably is a little bit more kind of blending, but because of the areas and they're kind of, I don't want to say messy, like how it's drawn as at all, but that's the nature of like the centres of flowers, obviously. They are sort of a little bit more messier, and so you can get away with not having such a clean look, I think. So I'm just using those 3 shades, the darkest shade, then going in, adding that kind of middle layer, and then finishing off with that lighter shade on top. For the leaves, I'm starting off with my mid-tone shade of green, which is Grass Field, and I'm sort of having it so that the leaf is sort of in 2 separate parts, if that makes sense. So I'm starting off where the sort of middle vein would be, flicking that towards the outside edge of the leaf, and then going in from the outside edge and flicking inwards. I didn't end up getting so much of sort of like a white highlight in the centre of these leaves, which is okay. I didn't mind that at all. It is a smaller area, so it's a little bit difficult to do that, and I don't think my pencils were as sharp as what I used on the petals. For the flower stems, I'm literally just kind of I don't want to say scribbling in the colour, but that pretty much is what I'm doing. I still wanted there to be some sort of white highlights on it and also some darker areas. So I'm not really being too precise with the stems in particular, because I know that they're not really going to end up looking like the same as the leaves or the petals, for example. With the leaves and the petals, I was trying to make sure that I went in the same direction that it was illustrated with, and I'm doing, like I said, the same thing here with these leaves as well. But for the stems, I'm literally just going in sort of a kind of up and down motion. So I'm going in here with the lightest shade of green, which is Limeade, and I'm just kind of filling in sort of a little bit more of the area here, bringing in a slightly different tone to those leaves. And now I'm going in with the darkest shade, which is Shadow Creek, and I do think this shade really does make quite a lot of difference. I'm trying not to sort of cover the whole area here, being a little bit more careful on the outside edges of those leaves to not bring in those kind of flicks too far, but I do think it looks quite nice, even in sort of a little bit more of a messy look, I suppose. So I like when I say messy, I don't think it's messy necessarily, but it's a different look than I would usually go for with colour pencils. Like I said, I go for a more blended look a lot of the time, but I really do love this look, and like I say, it does work out a little bit quicker because I'm not going over the area so many times. I do sometimes then kind of go back in again. If I think that an area needs to be a little bit darker, I can go back in and do that, or I have left too much kind of like a little white highlight in the centre and I want to cover that over a little bit more. But in general, I'm pretty much just going in with the sort of like the 3 layers. So just finishing off here with the stem. And then I have cut the whole reinforcer from the Labels and Tags 2 die set, and I'm popping that on the top of the tag, and I think that that just finishes it off quite nicely. I've then cut another of the Terrific Tags dies from the same cardstock. I'm adding glue tape onto the back of that, and then I can sandwich those 2 tags together. Not only is this going to give me stability to the tag, but it's also going to make it so that it looks nice and neat on the back when I want to write a personal message on it. I've added some twine through the top of the tag, and then I can tie that in a bow, and it does take me a little while to kind of fiddle with the bow to get the size that I want. And then once I'm happy with the size of that, I can cut those tails down with some scissors. I've then stamped a sentiment from the Sentiment Strips 2 stamp set, and I've heat embossed that onto some jet black cardstock. I'm then taking some Instant Dimension foam tape and I'm popping that on the back, and then I can adhere that down onto the tag. I'm then taking some Essential black and white enamel dots, and I'm adding a few of the black dots onto the tag, and that one there at the top is where I accidentally kind of scrubbed a little bit too much on the cardstock, so that enamel dot is going to cover it up perfectly. And then I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted the other ones to be, and I opted for them to be below the sentiment strip. I do often add embellishments around a sentiment strip. I think it just kind of brings your eye onto the sentiment, which I do quite like. So it's kind of in a triangle, which I usually go with embellishments, but not completely. So I really love how that press paint looks on the cardstock, and it's a little bit of a quicker way to do the colouring. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar here on YouTube and also over on the Altenew blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.